So here's the thing about Elon Musk. He can't retire. And honestly, it's got nothing to do with how much money he has. And I think a lot of regular people who've never built a rocket in their life, are dealing with the exact same thing. They just don't know it yet. Now, you probably think that this is a video about wealth. It's not. It's really about what happens when work stops being something you do and starts being something that you are. Because for some people, retirement isn't a vacation that they can't afford. It's more like an amputation that they can't imagine. Elon, he has more money than he could spend in 1,000 lifetimes. He could stop tomorrow. He won't. And yeah, the easy thing to say is, well, he just loves what he does. And I'm sure there's some truth to that. But I think the real answer is a little more uncomfortable than that. He might not know who he is without it. That's not a wealth story. That's a psychology story. And honestly, it happens at every income level, in every kind of career, to people who have never done anything remotely close to what he does. By the way, my name's Jason. I retired at 39. That was 10 years ago now. And in that time, I've watched people spend years getting ready for retirement. We're talking color-coded binders, tax plans, withdrawal strategies, and not one real answer to what Tuesday morning looks like 6 months after the job ends. And the research on this is actually pretty clear. Identity loss, purpose disruption, this kind of role collapse, these aren't side effects of retirement, but they're often the hardest part. And almost nobody's talking about it in conventional retirement planning. So before we get further into the Elon story, I think we need to ask a more useful question first. What is work giving him that money never could? Because once you understand that, that's when the real retirement conversation starts. See, a job isn't just a paycheck. It's more like psychological furniture. It's holding things up that you don't even notice until it's gone. I mean, think about what work actually gives you on a normal Tuesday. It gives you a reason to get up, a place to be. People need something from you. Decisions that only you can make. A role with your name on it. And at the end of the day, a pretty clear answer to this question that retirement quietly makes terrifying. What did I do today that actually mattered? Picture a guy who retires after 30 years. First morning, alarm goes off at 6:15, just out of pure habit. He gets up, makes his coffee, walks into the kitchen, and then he just stands there. Nobody's waiting on him. No meeting in 40 minutes. Nobody needs a decision. The phone isn't going to ring with something urgent. And the day just sits there in front of him, wide open, silent. He's got nowhere to be. That's not a money problem. That's an identity problem. And it catches people completely off guard because nobody warned them that it was coming. Work is this invisible spine holding up the day. And most people don't realize that until the spine is gone. Once you see that, Elon Musk stops looking strange. He stops looking like some workaholic who doesn't know when to quit. He starts looking like the loudest, most extreme version of something really ordinary. A person who built their whole life around being useful, necessary, and impossible to replace. And who genuinely has no idea how to walk away from that without losing the floor underneath them. Which brings me to what I think is the real retirement mistake. Not the financial one, the other one. People spend 20 years preparing for retirement like it's a math problem. The portfolio, the withdrawal rate, the tax strategy, the Social Security timing. I've seen people with color-coded binders, spreadsheets mapped out to the decimal point. And I say that with full respect. I mean, that work matters and it's hard. But those same people spend about 20 minutes preparing for who they'd be once the work stopped. They packed the suitcase, they just never asked who was getting on the plane. Here's the deal. The mechanism behind this isn't complicated, but it's deeply human. Over a long career, what you achieve slowly becomes who you are. You stop being a person who does something and you become the thing that you do. A contractor, a physician, an executive, a provider. The role isn't what you do from 9 to 5. It becomes how you measure your own value. And when your role becomes your self-worth, stopping doesn't feel like rest. It feels like erasure. I came across a retiree once who put it this way. I thought I was ready because the money was there. But in the first few months, I was restless, irritable and kind of vaguely ashamed because I didn't know what counted as a good day anymore. The spreadsheet was perfect. The identity was not. People rehearsed the budget for retirement. Almost nobody rehearses the silence. And here's the part that gets me. Success can make this harder, not easier. Elon has said publicly that changing the world takes extreme hours, sometimes 80 per week, sometimes more. What that tells you isn't just that he's ambitious. It tells you the work is all tangled up in the significance itself. The work is how he proves that he matters. Stop the work, stop the proof. Some people don't leave the treadmill because after enough years on it, the treadmill starts to feel like the ground. And retirement for people like that isn't a reward, it's a free fall. If this is hitting close to home, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Most people, they don't have this conversation until they're already in the middle of the transition, wondering why it feels so much harder than they expected. But here's the thing that I want to bring closer to home, because you don't need Elon's money or his companies for this to affect you. Think about a retired foreman who spent 30 years running a crew. He knew everybody's name, he made calls, he solved problems, kept things moving. Now he's home. And without really realizing it, he starts walking through his own house the way that he used to walk through the job site, looking for things to manage, things to fix, something that needs him, except nothing does. Or a retired nurse who tells you that she doesn't miss the long shifts or the stress of the difficult patients. What she misses is walking into a room and having her presence matter. The feeling that someone's day was better because she showed up. That's not a billionaire problem. That's a human problem. Provider, manager, caregiver, tradesman, fixer, decision maker. The job title doesn't matter. What matters is whether your self-worth spent the last 20 or 30 years living inside of your usefulness. Because if it did, retirement doesn't set you free from work. It sets you adrift from yourself. Now, I want to be honest with you. I think about this in my own life. My wife and I, we spend about 5 months a year traveling in Asia, and it's genuinely wonderful. Nearly every day feels like something new. There's discovery, movement, stimulation. But when we come back here to Indiana for the summer, the contrast is stark. Days can feel long, the social circle is small, family lives hours away. A lot of things that fill time here feel expensive relative to what they actually give you. So we focus on what's free or close to it. Hiking, free concert in the town center, the gym 4 times a week. And I can tell you from the inside, even someone who chose early retirement and genuinely loves the life can still feel a pull of that question on a slow Tuesday in July. What did I do today that counted? That question never fully goes away. You just have to learn to answer it differently. That's the work that nobody tells you about. And I think this is where the whole thing starts to make sense. Research on retirement and purpose found something that sounds kind of backwards at first. People who leave low satisfaction, exhausting jobs, they often experience a genuine increase in their sense of purpose after they retire. The job was a burden. Leaving it is a relief. The self that existed underneath the job was already there, just waiting. But for someone whose identity was fused to the mission, the status, the significance of what they did, the opposite can happen. Leaving feels like loss, not relief. One person leaves a prison and feels lighter. Another leaves a throne and feels empty. The difference isn't income. It isn't prestige. It's what the work meant to them before they stopped. So the real retirement question isn't, can I afford to stop? It's something more like, what exactly am I losing when I stop? And have I built anything to replace it? That's the question that most people ask way too late. They get to retirement and then they start figuring out who they are without the job. But by then, the transition is already happening and the disorientation, it's already real. Picture a man cleaning an already clean garage for the 3rd time this week. Not because it needs it, but because he can't sit still with that feeling that he's no longer necessary. Or a woman who spent a decade counting down to endless Saturdays and then discovers that endless Saturdays without structure or purpose can feel like life slowly losing its shape. This isn't failure. It isn't weakness. It's what happens when you retire the role before you build the self that exists outside of it. See, mixed in with all that pressure from work was something that people actually needed. Purpose, routine, identity, a feeling of being anchored to something real. When the pressure goes, those things can go with it. And if you haven't built a new foundation before you left, you're sitting in a house with no floor. Now, say what you want about Elon. And I know, people have a lot to say. But I think he's actually showing us something real here. I think it's a warning, not about wealth, but about what happens when a person never separates who they are from what they produce. So, why can he retire? Not because he needs the money, clearly, but because the work and the self may have become the same thing. Stepping away from the mission would mean stepping away from the whole system that tells him who he is. Retirement doesn't only remove work, it reveals what was underneath it. For some people, that's rich and full and ready. For others, the career was the architecture of the day, the source of relevance, the answer to what makes a person valuable. When that goes, the silence can be disorienting in ways that no financial plan prepares you for. Retirement isn't just walking off the stage. For some people, it's the first moment that the room goes quiet enough to actually hear who they are without the applause. The real challenge isn't filling the calendar. It's building a self that doesn't need a job title to feel real. If this resonated, I think you should check out my other video. It covers the other side of this. What happens when people wait too long to stop? The cost, they're not just financial. I'll leave a link down below. And remember, retirement isn't just a math problem. Thanks for watching, my friends. I'll see you in the next one.